One night, I woke up from my sleep and a voice shouted in my head that said I should make some games. And this is where it all started. So I tried learning Unity many years ago, but that didn't quite work. In Unity, you have to write code using C#, and C#, to me it was more like CU in the mental asylum, because it was too much for my tiny brain. But now, things had changed. No, I'm still an idiot, but I found out about Unreal Engine, especially Blueprints, Unreal Engine's visual scripting tool. So technically, I can make an entire game without having to write a single line of code. And that's all I had to know. I wanted to make a first-person shooter with a combat system inspired by Doom and some roguelike elements like permadeath, which means if you die at any point in the game, you'll have to start from the beginning. And I got to work. I watched a few tutorials on YouTube, and in a few days, I managed to make the player move around and do the basic stuff such as jumping and dashing. At that time, my plan was to give the player 4 guns at once, which would aim at the enemies on their own, and all the player had to do was move around, like in Potato. But I scrapped that idea as it takes away the control from the player. Then I stuck with just 2 weapons at a time, hoping that you could easily handle 2 at once. And around that time, I tried to improve my modeling skills because my previous work was atrocious. I made this pistol called the CX-77 and this shotgun that is inspired by the Terminator movie, and also this very small piece of a level. While I was working on the game, I found out about the Boss Rush Game Jam, and I immediately knew that I had to take part in it. And if you'd asked me the reason, it reminds me of a Reddit post that said, "How did you all get into game dev?" And that made me think. The joy of creating something of your own that can bring a smile to people's faces and give them a sense of happiness. Money, bitch! I couldn't let that $4,000 prize pool just slide like that, so I started making the game. It was a game about plants and their revolution against humans. I even wrote an actual story and some good dialogues for it. And I combined all that with a good enough gameplay. This game has 3 boss fights, each taking place in different levels. One of them was this forest that I made in 2 days. And honestly, I was really proud of what I created, because I went from this piece of shit to this in just a couple of months. So that's some progress. Anyway, I learned a lot of things working on this game, like implementing melee combat and animations, art, post-processing, and baking lights in Unreal Engine sucks. If you wanna know more about how I made this game, you can check out the devlog here. Then I went back to the game of my dreams, and it was a scary sight. With all the knowledge I gained from working on the last forest, I just couldn't stand how bad my previous projects were. This looks like it was made by a 5-year-old. From my base, so like every sane person, I decided to fix this by deleting the entire project and starting over from scratch. And that didn't even take long, as this time I knew what I was doing. I made some more bad weapons for the game. Speaking of weapons, Q-Hark, one of the members of my Discord server, link in the description, is an amazing artist, and they were generous enough to make 2 guns for me for free. And unlike me, they know what they're doing. So I added these guns to the game, and they look great. Thanks Q-Hark. But then I suddenly realized that I'm making a game about shooting monsters, and I didn't have any monsters in the game other than this, which are kinda important for a game about shooting monsters. And for one of the monsters, I made a big mistake of trying to add procedural animations to it, and that didn't turn out to be pretty. Procedural animation? More like post-traumatic stress disorder to me. But that didn't stop me, and I kept making more monsters, like this. an overweight abomination that just keeps jumping around like a frog. Or this, the same creature but with a bit of a fashion sense. After that, I realized my game sucks, as if it was not obvious from the start. And another thing I realized was that adding more cosmetics can cover up how bad it is from the inside. Wait, I've heard that before. So first of all, I added this pickup system that lets the player pick up important stuff such as ammo and health. Then it was time to wrap up the combat by adding power-ups. So there are going to be two types of power-ups: active, which have to be activated by the player manually, like this rover gun thing. That is just a robot on wheels with a gun shoved into its face. So you buy it and spawn it, and passive power-ups that are always active, like increased speed, more health, or immunity to the emotional damage you feel when no is not the worst she can say. And that wraps up my 6 months progress learning Unreal Engine. I've still got a long way to go, and I'm going to keep going. Wait, is that even a sentence? I will keep going until I finish the game. So stay tuned and make sure to subscribe. My goal is to become the biggest game dev YouTuber in the world. So Danny, you better come back, or I'm coming to get your ass. If you liked the video, hit that like button. If you didn't, tell me what pissed you off in the comments. And have a great day.